What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Facts on the Ground. I'm Misty Winston, joined by my co-host Jesse Zerwell. Today we have a very special guest who is host of the Naturalist Capitalist. I have a hard time saying that.
All right.
It's fine. He's the host of the Naturalist Capitalist. I got to hang out on his show. I don't know, maybe about a month ago or something. My mom's cat's really loud again. Sorry. So ridiculous. Anyways, welcome to the show, Reed Coverdale.
Hey, thanks for having me. You mispronounced my show name. I mispronounced your name when I had you on, so it's all good.
What did I say wrong? What did I do?
No. I mean, you just said it's hard to say or whatever. Yeah.
I can't. I don't know why. Never mind. That's just me being weird again. Anyway,
twisters.
Yeah. Sometimes my brain will not form words. I don't know. It's a whole thing. Anyway. Welcome, dude. It's good to have you on the show. It was fun to come on your show. We both experience the same level of bullshit from people who get mad at us because we're willing to talk to people that we don't agree with. Like, you get very much the same thing. Like, why do you love commies and why do you love Nazis? Like, you get both of those sides.
Yeah.
Which, it's weird. That's weird. So
yeah. I mean, I've kind of embraced it at this point. I don't know if you've noticed, I almost look for the outrage now. I've gotten to the point where I just love it. Like, if someone gets angry that I'm pointing something out, or that
if you're not following Reed, you should be, because it's funny because he's like blatantly sarcastic and people get really mad. Like,
it's fun.
It is fun. It is fun. Yeah. But what do you make of that? Like, do you think it's, because I think it's like a lot of like team mentality, just like cult of personality bullshit. Do you think we can ever get past that though? Like, it's so hard for me to imagine ever a time where we can get past the bullshit like that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's ever not existed. I mean, I think it's just so blatant now because it's so easy to have everybody on the same page where, decades ago it was harder because you couldn't get the same information and the same package to everybody in the whole country at the same time. It took longer and there were different newspapers putting, slightly different stories out or whatever. But now you can create that narrative. But the sarcasm or shit posting or whatever you want to call it, I do that so much because I find that people who tend to see through the bullshit of propaganda can also tell when someone's being sarcastic or making fun of something. Most of the people who when I do the Israel posting, with all the flags and the fireworks and like, God bless America or whatever, and people freak out about it, they're typically the same type of people who can't see past their MSNBC filter or their Fox News filter or whatever. So I find that a very effective tool to kind of weed out the idiots and, bring the more critically minded together.
Yeah, it's almost as if a lot of those people can't see the cleverness behind it for whatever reason. They're blind to it. They just want to see it as the surface insult it appears to be, like what you just described. I can picture so many people looking at that and just seeing maybe something anti-Semitic about it and coming at you with that, with totally failing to see the humor, the sarcasm behind it.
It's satirical. I mean, I think people are genuinely looking for a reason to be offended. I think those kinds of people who get mad, I think they're actively seeking offense. Like, they want to be offended. I mean, there's a lot of those, right?
Yeah. I mean, it feels like people either want to be told what to think or they want their confirmation bias confirmed. And so when something doesn't fit perfectly into either of those two boxes, they get angry. And other people, they do realize what I'm doing and they also get angry. Some people realize what I'm doing and they think it's funny, but then other people realize I'm mocking an obvious position that a lot of people have, and they will come at me with outrage. I have a little bit more respect for those people because at least they understood what I was trying to say, and I'll engage them a little bit more. But the ones who don't get it and either are like, yes, I agree with you, brother, fellow patriot or whatever, or the ones who think I'm being serious and are on the other side who are just like, look at this idiot, he actually and those people I don't even bother with. I mean, I just retweet them and let my audience deal with them. So
yeah throw them to the dogs.
Yeah,
Outsource.
exactly.
Outsource your trolls. Okay, so listen, Andrew, my dude that I co-host the vigils with, he like likes trolls because he's never dealt with them. So which I get it. Sometimes they're fun to deal with. But so I told him I'm gonna start sending all my trolls his way. Like, go play with Andrew. He wants to, play with you. But yeah, so but you were talking that it's so much easier now to get information out, but there's obviously been like a dramatic crackdown on that. I mean, through Chelsea Manning, Julian Assange, all of the Daniel Hale, Joshua Schultz. There's like, and a lot of people don't seem to understand that it doesn't matter like what your ideology is or what you're fighting for, whatever issue you happen to be, have a heart on for, you're not gonna be able to effectively fight against it without the ability to do what we're doing, share information, have conversations, all of that stuff. And there's, like a direct assault on our ability to do that. But I can't get anybody to care about it. And it seems weird because it seems like, even like, I mean, would you consider yourself former libertarian? Cause I know you said you've kind of made transition into like, right? Is that
Well, I'm like a libertarian anarchist. I'm still in the party. I just have kind of switched the way I look at things. I used to look at it as we are going to get libertarian government that's going to dismantle itself, and that's kind of naive thinking. So I mean, I'm still officially a libertarian, but at this point I'm more focused on just trying to change the way people think and get people involved in agorism or just disinvolvement with the government, kind of what we talked about when you were on my show.
Yeah,
so,
mutual aid,
yeah,
taking care of each other. Yeah, that kind of. But I mean, the reason why I was asking that is because it seems like I hate like access to information. It sounds dumb, but you know what I mean. They're seeking global jurisdiction over like information and journalism and all of those things, and that impacts literally everybody. But I can't get literally anybody to care about. That's not fair. People care about it, but you know what I mean. It's really difficult to get, and it's just really frustrating to me that something that's so blatantly obvious and impacts all of us is being so thoroughly ignored on all sides.
Yeah, I mean, I find that they go after the important big people who can get things out, like Julian Assange or Edward Snowden, or that, then like people like Ryan Dawson, people who have like really big followings, they tend to get rid of them. But then people at my level, I don't matter that much because not enough people pay attention to me. It seems what they do for the most part is they try to flood the marketplace of information with a bunch of idiocy and bull crap and distraction, and that's way more effective than trying to literally shut everyone down who says anything that diverges from the narrative. So I'm still at the level where it's just people are distracted, and maybe I can bring them over and get them to start.
I think you're underselling yourself, dude, because they're literally trying to shut all of us up. Like if you even mention ivermectin, you can get shut down. If you like, there are certain key words that you can't say. Like even if like having Assange in a title, the algorithms will like they're trying really desperately. They flood the market of information with propaganda. But we see it all the time. Look at Last American Vagabond, Whitney Webb. They've all like Patreon and PayPal, like they're all trying to attack them and take them all down. And that's really, Convo Couch is dealing with it. Frank Analysis is dealing with it. Nico deals with it. We deal with it really. We haven't monetized or anything. So I think we stay kind of under the radar, but we're definitely fucked with algorithmically. Our subscriptions are always fucked with. So, I think that there's like a concerted effort. I think just because it's so easy, they have complete control. Google has like near complete control. Google and like Facebook and Twitter have, a serious amount of control over who has the right to free speech, essentially, because they took a sitting president off the internet, like just took him off the internet. Like there was no due process. There was no vote. It was just, and I'm not a Trump fan, but that's scary, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. They're definitely not leaving us alone. I just think that they have a hands-off approach as much as they can because it's hard, right? It's hard to eliminate everybody who's talking about something they don't like. It's a lot easier to distract everyone and get them to not care about what we're talking about. I think that's just the prevailing thing. I did have 2 weeks ago, an open secret, the producer of that documentary, Gabe Hoff, came out against me saying I was an anti-Semite and a prolific Jew hater, like all this smear crap. And he has a pretty big following on that account. He has like 70,000 followers or something on Twitter. So
why did he make those accusations?
Because I talk about Israel quite a bit, and I think he's a Zionist. I don't know a ton about him, but I have Ryan Dawson on my show pretty regularly, and I guess he's the guy who got him kicked off of Patreon and YouTube and a bunch of platforms. So he has beef with him, and since I have him on, that put him on to me. And so what it was is he was messaging people about me. He wasn't even posting it or tagging me in it. He was too much of a coward to do that. So then someone finally blew the whistle on him and told me what he was saying. So then I just tagged him directly and made a post like saying, hey, why don't you at me next time? And, just told him off. And then he blocked me. And then the Open Secret platform blocked me. And then they blocked all of my friends, like anyone who liked or commented on that post instantly got blocked. It was just right down the line. So that was the most blatant thing that's happened to me so far. But I mean, so to answer your question, like, yeah, I don't think they're leaving us alone by any stretch, but I think their last resort is to actually get rid of us, because that creates contempt for them, and it's also a lot harder. Like, the easiest thing they can do is just get people not to care, and I think they have been very successful on that front. I still blame the people more than the media, because the media is really obviously bullshit. I mean, if you're any sort of thinking person at all, you can tell that what they're saying is not true. And you can see where all the benefits are going from, the narratives that they sell. So I still, at the end of the day, blame individual people for being idiots and going along with it. So I don't know. I try to wake them up one at a time, and we'll see how long I stick around.
Yeah, there's certainly an individual responsibility, but it's also that these technologies on which the censorship is happening now, they're so prolific that we rely on them, essentially. Like, we need them. If we're doing a show like this, we need certain social media platforms, and but we don't have any rights with regard to that, and that's becoming increasingly dangerous, with regard to just being able to express yourself in a way that might be considered controversial or whatever. Not having that freedom it seems like what's coming, and it's been a very slippery slope toward that.
Well, having some tech bro decide who gets free speech is not cool. Like, that's just not ever going to be a thing I'm okay with. There should be due process. You shouldn't just get kicked off and then Jen Psaki comes out and is like, well, if you're kicked off of one platform, you should be kicked off of all platforms. Great. The fuck you talking about? Like, it's insane that this is just like an acceptable thing, and everybody's convinced themselves that it doesn't matter. And Facebook and Twitter are private companies. They're completely intertwined with our government, y'all. They own your government. Look at the lobbying dollars that they spend. Look at the donations they give to politicians. It's a complete Atlantic Council. I mean, they're completely intermeshed with your government. They have, and the fact that they have that much control over the narrative and who gets to speak. And dude, it's weird to me that people are okay with that on any level, honestly. And I think that they tell themselves a lot of lies.
Yeah, I mean, even if it is a completely private company, I don't see why that's a good argument for being okay with what's happening. I mean, are you going to say it's a private boxcar when you got to go to the concentration camp? Like, I mean, at what point does it, stop mattering whether it's government or private? Like, I mean, I tend to think in general that government is worse because it has a guaranteed income that you can't do anything about, and it has backing of the law and complete immunity. But when you get to a point where a corporation is so big and it's so intertwined with the government, I don't really see how that's any different than a government force. And I don't see why you shouldn't be screaming at the top of your lungs against massive coercion taking place from them, gaining power. And, censoring dissenting voices is a form of power. It's one of the most impactful, forms of power you can have. So yeah, anyone who is defending what's going on in the name of private enterprise, I think is an idiot. I mean, I don't think it doesn't matter if it's private enterprise. Like, you should still be against it. And then I agree with you. I don't think this is a completely cut and dry situation. The other thing is, like, everyone's always talking about Section 230, and I don't really see why that's the problem. I think if we get rid of Section 230, the problem gets worse, because then you're putting all the liability on these companies for anything that anybody says. So naturally, they're just going to censor more of what you say. Like, they might not even let you post anything until they pre-approve it. Because if you say we should go, kill X politician or something, and then someone actually does it, then, Facebook or Twitter or whatever could be held liable. To me, it seems like a breach of contract. That's the problem. Like, they tell you, we're going to get rid of you if you do this. And the policies they outline aren't that unreasonable. The problem is what they're defining. I mean, what they're choosing to align with their definitions.
Well, they keep it very vague.
Yeah.
And then they selectively apply the rules.
Exactly.
And it's, directed in a specific way to, reach a certain end game. I mean, it's all, I mean, that's really all that it's about. And it's all about dissenting or silencing dissent. So, that's why they're trying to silence Julian Assange. That's why they're trying to silence Daniel Hale and other whistleblowers. It's all about silencing all dissent, I think, at this point. And that's the threat of getting kicked off of social media if you talk about certain things. Like, people are already self-censoring. Like, this shit is really effective. They don't even have to censor you to get you to censor yourself. Right. People are terrified to speak about certain issues. Like, it's amazing the level of control that they have over like what's reasonable discourse or acceptable discourse.
Yeah. And the result of that is radicalization, because you have some idiots who are saying something that's not true necessarily, but they get censored for it. So what does that do? That creates empathy for them. That will radicalize the people who have been censored. It will build up more anger towards certain groups. Like, this is why, this can fuel anti-Semitism, with the complete pro-Israel stuff all the time. If you question Israel at all, you're a bigot. That can fuel anti-Semitism, because people can finally get to the point where they're like, you know what, fuck these people. And then they're not thinking about the state of Israel anymore. They're starting to lump all Jewish people into one certain group because of their negative interactions with them. And, I don't know. If you wanted to create Nazis, like, you have made the perfect scenario for it, because you're creating people that hate anyone who disagrees with them, because they've just been battered and bruised for any dissenting opinion that they've had. And then, the people that are letting them say whatever they want, a lot of those people aren't very nice guys that you really want to associate with. But these people are like, well, no one else will let me say anything I want to say. So I think that all the radicalization and all the stupidity and all the crazy opinions that have risen over, the last decade or so, I would completely blame the establishment for it. Because they didn't allow any free discourse. They didn't allow any questioning of anything. So that pushes people to other ridiculous conclusions. You're
like
ridiculous.
Russiagate and QAnon and
yeah, exactly. Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Seeking out answers and mostly doing so by confirmation bias. But I think a lot of that has to do with people being afraid of, especially during this pandemic, and we can get into that if anybody wants to, but really not knowing what the hell is going on, because the information from every direction is constantly shifting. And I think, we know when people are scared, we saw it post 9/11, like, they will cling to any safety that's offered to them, even if it involves lies or censorship.
Yeah. How much am I allowed to say anyway about COVID? Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. That was like, if you still don't question anything the media says after the last year and a half, that's where I'm saying, like, I don't have much pity for you. That's why I kind of blame the people for this, because it has been so dumb. Like, we knew in like April of 2020 that we didn't need to deep clean hard surfaces anymore. Like, the beginning of March was when they were saying, oh, this thing can live for 3 days on hard surfaces. And so we need to sanitize the shit out of everything, because you could touch something 24 hours after someone who has the disease and get it. They knew that wasn't true by April. And I remember when they said it wasn't true anymore. And we're still deep cleaning everything. Like, they're wiping down all the counters. They're wiping down pens after people use them. And I mean, the virus dies very instantly after it leaves, after it's on a hard surface or whatever. And then the vaccines, like how back and forth they've been with them, there was no incentive to get the vaccine because you still had to wear a mask and you still had to social distance. And so then they were like, okay, we'll get rid of that. And it was just so sudden. Everyone was like, wait a second, why are you just lifting this out of the blue? And now they're putting it back in place again that, you still have to wear masks and like, I don't know. So, I mean, there's no clear direction with any of this. And the funny contradiction is, they're always saying, trust the science. And I'm an atheist. I'm not a religious person because I believe in like actual scientific discovery and study and
empirical data.
Yeah,
Yes.
and science has become a new religion, like scientism or
It's
whatever you want to call it.
creepy.
And I was raised really religiously and I hated it because of how cultish it was. And now I'm seeing a lot of non-believers embrace the same exact thing with scientism. Like if you like if I point out that thing about how we don't need to be wiping down surfaces all the time, or that the vaccine doesn't stop you from spreading the virus to other people, or that people my age and my health have less than like 0.1% chance of dying from COVID, according to this is all like according to the CDC too. This isn't like alternative news. This is what the CDC fucking says.
Mhm.
And they will lose their shit at me and be like, how dare you question the science? And I mean, the science is settled, or trust the science. Like those statements don't even make any sense.
That's like the antithesis of science. It drives me fucking crazy. Trust the science. The science means that you question everything. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, this isn't how that works. And, it drives me nuts too, because, everybody wants to get mad at like anti-maskers or anti-vaxxers or whatever, people who are against lockdowns or what. Y'all, there's absolutely you're mad at the wrong people. You should be mad at the government institutions and the pharmaceutical companies who have created such a sense of just absolute distrust. It's a clown show. They're constantly caught lying. Fauci himself has been, how many times has he been caught lying? Like straight up lying to people. And then you want to get mad because people question what he says? Fuck out of here. I question everything he says. You should too. Like you should be, there's no way that the people who are just like accepting all of this, who are otherwise intelligent individuals who recognize the fact that our government uses shit like this against us all the time. And they're just like, oh, you trust the science, and they turn to like these zombies. What is wrong with you?
And it's not like Fauci is getting up there and deciding on his own to lie. I would be hugely surprised if that were even the case once. So, there's at least a retinue of people along with him who maybe purposely are deciding to lie or spread misinformation. I don't know.
There's a very high likelihood that that's the case.
It's so discombobulated that it almost seems planned at this point. Like, how could it come to this point, like if it weren't on purpose? It just doesn't make sense to me. But
see, I thought he was going to be a sacrificial lamb, because a month ago I thought they were going to have his head and it was going to be like, oh, this guy is the reason we had all these mistakes, which he obviously wasn't the only reason. But I guess I missed when that turned. It must have been pretty recent, but I didn't even notice like when the narrative switched and now he's great again.
Yeah.
Well, and there's also a video that just came out. Somebody put it out today. It's like a montage of leftist or progressive. I don't even like to say leftist because they're like liberals at best. But politicians like questioning the vaccine when Trump was still president. And so now all these people who are telling you that like you have to get the vaccine or you're a bad person are like questioning it when it was under Trump. And it's like, but you expect these people to just like Barack Obama's getting ready to have like a 500 person birthday party at his estate, his Martha's Vineyard estate. Like they want to tell everybody we got to wear masks and we got to social distance and we got to lock down, and motherfuckers having a 500 person birthday party. And then you get mad because people question what these assholes are telling you. If it doesn't apply to them, then why should it apply to us? Like y'all are just acting like that's an okay thing. It's just weird.
And why doesn't it apply to them?
Right.
Yeah. I broke a lot of people's brains with my shit posting about the vaccine a couple of weeks ago. I ended up on some lists like this one account that has like 150,000 followers. I think it was bad COVID-19 takes or something. They retweeted something I said about how I'm not getting the vaccine. And so a bunch of shit libs just came at me, claws out, all angry. And I remember to one of them, I quote tweeted them and said, "I am not getting the Trump vaccine." And it just broke them. They didn't even know what to do. They're just like, how do I respond to this? You know, like what? It was, I mean,
I wish I would have seen that in real time. That would have been fun. That would have been fun. Cause that's what it is, really. It is it's just so dumb. The mental gymnastics that people were able to pull to convince themselves that when their team does it, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
all good.
See, I'm not one who, I'm obviously not a Trump supporter. I've never voted for him. I hated him. Like I was one of the most anti-Trump libertarians out there. Like I really don't like him at all. But what I was telling people when he was kind of becoming the scapegoat for everything bad, I don't think it's really because they were scared of him, because he didn't really do much to make them scared. I mean, he would say some things occasionally that they didn't like, but 9 out of 10 times he would just pony up and do whatever they wanted him to do.
Yeah, if I can just interject with an anecdote that applies there. I remember back in, I think it was early 2020, Jeremy Scahill of The Intercept doing some sort of like online symposium. And this was like right after the pandemic was declared. But he was talking about Trump as if he were like the most violent president in the history of presidents toward like journalism, especially, but just everybody in general, like with regard to, LGBTQ people, take your pick. It was like this hyper panic from journalists like that, who are usually level-headed. And I remember thinking even then, like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't see that. And, maybe you have some keen insight that I don't, but I think it's like pretty obvious that he wasn't this like, I mean, he was a monstrosity, but not in that way.
Yeah, he was bad because he was so similar to Obama and Biden. Like that's why he's a monster. That's
and he's just
thought.
Loud. That's the only like people didn't like him because he's loud. He had no gift for subtlety. Like dude would just say shit out loud that he wasn't supposed to say. Like, we're gonna go take their oil. Like he would just say that out loud. And I loved that.
Yes,
like,
when he said that, I remember when he said that, and I thought that was great. And so many people were mad, and I was like, yeah, it's terrible, but
it's true. It's the fucking truth. Thank you for the truth.
Yeah, he's not saying we're going there for democracy or to promote peace. Like he's just straight up saying, yeah, we're gonna go steal their oil. But what I was getting at there is that I don't think he was a danger and that they had to get rid of him. I think that they just needed a scapegoat for everything horrible so that they could draw distraction away from how bad they were. So, he was the perfect president to make look like a tyrant and a horrible person because of how brash he was and how arrogant and what a disaster 2020 was or whatever. So he was the perfect guy. He was the perfect fall guy to make Biden seem like somewhat competent. But it backfired because once you get rid of Trump, then you have Biden.
Well, and I think it's not even just his job wasn't even just to make Joe Biden more palatable, because I think that's part of it. But I also think his job was to make Barack Obama or to get the things done that Barack Obama didn't want to do because he was worried about his legacy. Like, Barack Obama wouldn't prosecute Julian Assange. Like, that you're going to fuck up the First Amendment. Like, that's going to be your legacy. So they gave it to Donald Trump. And they did that with numerous things. Like, there were a lot of things that they forced through with Donald Trump that no Democrat would want to do, like would want to have on them. And I think he was used in many ways to distract away from, like, make Barack Obama look better, and then push through a lot of things that somebody like Barack Obama, who's a complete narcissist and is worried only about how he's perceived in his legacy. I'm
really glad to hear you say that, because so many people don't think Trump was a puppet, and he was just like the ultimate puppet to me. Because he talked all this big shit during the primary and then did like absolutely none of it, you know? And if you can't look at him and think I mean, if you look at him and think he wasn't a puppet, I just don't know what accomplishments you think he made, or like what type of people you think he was choosing to put in his cabinet. I mean, the whole Steve Bannon cabinet evaporated like immediately, and then we had John Bolton and Mike Pompeo and like all these guys in there right away. So I mean, I don't know why people think that
he was not an outsider. He
No.
wasn't. No. And listen, like I get real tired of leftists pretending like Hillary Clinton didn't go to his wedding, or that Joe Biden's granddaughter was just photographed with Trump's daughter on vacation. These people don't hate each other.
Right.
It's like it's professional wrestling. It's a soap opera with psychopaths. Like that's what we're dealing with. And they don't hate each other. I'm sure that they don't. It's no different than any other group. It's like a bunch of high school cliques. I'm sure that there are some people who like each other, some people don't, but they're all owned and operated by the exact same people. They're all working towards the same agenda. They have their, like, it's a show. So the Democrats know that this is their role, this is their script, and the Republican politicians know that this is their role and this is their script, and they know exactly who's going to fight with who, and who's going to be the heel for this week. Joe Manchin is currently the heel of the Democratic Party. He's the reason why nothing can get done. I mean, it's all theater.
Yeah, it's like parleying between royal families. It really is at this point.
Yeah, I mean, my philosophy in general is either I want someone really good to be president, or I want someone who's horrible, because I don't like the middle ground. Like I want someone who is going to have everybody on their toes paying attention to whatever the next wild move he makes, or I want someone who's actually like trying to dismantle the state and the wars or whatever. So this Joe Biden presidency, I haven't really figured out if I'm a fan of the chaos yet, because it has woken up people on the right a bit. Like they're freaking out about some stuff that they were kind of asleep about under Trump, but I'm not sure about the left or the liberals or the moderates or whatever. Like I don't know. I mean,
liberals are useless.
They are, yeah. I mean,
legitimately useless. Like I'm gonna get shit for saying that, but
they're super useless. I mean,
yeah.
I come from the right originally, so I mean, I have more contempt for how useless they are, because like to me, the left has always been useless. It's like, yeah, it's the left. They don't do anything. They're crazy or whatever. But like the right, I grew up with them, so I had this belief like the right is going to, protect whatever, and they don't protect any of it. They're fucking useless. They're just like have you ever heard that Michael Malice quote? Conservatives are just progressives driving the speed limit. Like it's 100% accurate. Like they're just there. Or then Tim Pool says, like, the Democrats say, let's burn the whole house down. And then the Republicans say, no, let's just burn down the kitchen. That's totally what it is. Like, they're just there to like run damage control for the other side and keep each other in power. That's all they do.
Yeah. And a perfect example of that, a timely one, is I was just reading in Defense Times before we started this conversation about the National Defense Authorization Act that they're trying to get passed, that the Biden administration is trying to get passed. And the Biden administration had initially set a what they're calling a top line of $714 billion. And now it's up to $740 billion. And this article, this piece quotes a number of Democrats, particularly in the Senate, who are just completely fine with rolling over and capitulating to the $740 billion, because they need just to get the bill passed so they can say, as with a Democratic president in the office, the Biden administration got the bill passed. It's like this thing that has to be done, and that's the only reason for it. And you can see it in the way they talk too, because all of them say that this is necessary because there are threats out there. Believe you me, there are threats out there. They never name the threats. And of course, we know that all the claims of increased military spending, increased surveillance, have thwarted no terrorist attacks whatsoever since a lot of these programs were implemented.
And it just makes us more enemies, y'all. If you don't want people to like hate you, stop blowing up their country.
Yeah.
If you don't want terrorists, then stop like murdering people for oil. How about that? How about we do that? Maybe just try it one time. Let's just try it one time and see how it works out. Right?
And I don't know, the sad thing is the only guy who really talked about the war on terror who was a high profile candidate recently was Ron Paul. Like Rand Paul, Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders, they all supported the war on terrorism. And like, yeah, I mean, stopping regime change wars is a great step in the right direction, but these precision airstrikes or 500-pound bombs being dropped in neighborhoods where there's collateral damage and you kill 5-year-olds and you rattle a whole neighborhood. And I mean, what's that going to do? Like, how is the drone war, the war on terrorism, going to modernize any of these countries? I mean, if you want, I mean, it was like I was talking earlier about the Trump supporters who get radicalized because they get censored and all this. Like, it's the same idea, just on a much more extreme level. Like, if you're killing people's brothers and fathers and dropping bombs in their neighborhoods and drone striking their weddings, like, they're going to turn into terrorists, and they're going to,
I mean, just imagine how if somebody did that to your children.
Yeah.
What would your reaction? Y'all, I'm about to be really pissed off, and I think any human being would understand that. It's fucking ridiculous that this is like something that we have to explain to people, that, blowing up funerals and weddings and school buses is gonna piss people off. You're gonna have enemies after that. It doesn't make you safer. That's not for your safety.
We saw it play out in just about real time with the insurgency in Iraq after the illegal invasion and occupation there shortly thereafter, when the Ba'ath Party was dissolved, and the military that survived, they're basically out of a job. So you have these armed men, these dispossessed men who are watching their country that's been illegally invaded and occupied also be destroyed, and watching their brothers and sisters be destroyed as well. Remember the looting of the Iraqi archives, and how a lot of that ended up essentially in the hands of Hobby Lobby, one of their subsidiaries, and now they're supposed to be repatriating that. But yeah, we saw that insurgency develop so quickly, and I remember Rumsfeld, proclaiming that it was going to be taken care of quickly, just like the war was supposed to be over quickly. And but point being, we saw people radicalized because of that war of aggression, like I said, in almost real time. And it's proof that it happens. This isn't something abstract that we're talking about.
And also, we mentioned the drone war. Shout out to Daniel Hale, who's the drone whistleblower, the drone program whistleblower, who was just sentenced to 54 months in prison, and he should be free and celebrated. He just spent his birthday in prison while Barack Obama is planning, again, a 500 person party for his 60th birthday. And dude should be in prison. He's a war criminal. But Daniel Hale is in prison instead. So shout out to him for exposing the drone program. Sorry, just wanted to get that in there.
No, it's true. The drone program was one of the first things that started radicalizing me back in 2014, because I think it was when Rand Paul was filibustering John Brennan's nomination to the CIA, and he was talking a lot about the drone strike program in that, and I didn't know anything about it at the time. And I started finding out about it. I was like, no way, this can't be real. Like, there's no way that in America this would be okay. And then you start peeling the onion back further, and you just find out more and more about all the other stuff that's okay in America, and you're just like, what? But yeah, I mean, that was my first step toward, or it was my first step away from being in the bubble, I guess.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Collateral Murder was that for me in 2010.
Yeah,
the Collateral Murder video. That was
absolutely
a slap in the face.
That was I think for a lot of people, and I include myself, the first time actually seeing it.
Yes, because I think intellectually
visual.
I knew that like that was happening in war, like that kind of stuff was happening. Like intellectually I knew that, like consciously, but to see it and to hear, I think for me it was the audio, like the helicopter, like light them up. It's like a video. They're playing a video game, and it's like some kids in a van, and they're on their way home from school, and they come back and double tap the first responders and all. I mean, that's fucking crazy to see that. And, that was like a jolt of lightning through my body.
And what also strikes me about the Collateral Murder video and a lot of drone footage is how shitty it is, how grainy it is. How can the people who are pulling the trigger possibly have even the remotest idea of who they're pulling the trigger on. In Collateral Murder, it makes it kind of eerie. Like you see the delay between like when you hear the shot fired and when it hits the ground, when it hits the victims, and on top of that, there's just like this callous, like Misty said, this like callous but almost like aroused talk about what's taking place. But yeah, like that was the first time like actually seeing that, knowing it happened, but then actually seeing it. That was definitely like monumental politically and whatever for me. But then also when Obama killed several American citizens via drone strike, I think that was for me another big, it just gave me a sense like things are really, really out of control. Like shit was fucked up when Iraq was illegally invaded and occupied, but now it's like a whole other level,
Yeah, extrajudicial murder
Some
with
new
no due
Matrix.
process is really something.
Yeah.
It's really something. And it's just like done out in the open. And they don't even like it's, I mean, you have they make jokes about drone strikes. That's how normalized it is. Like our culture is so fucking sick. Like, that we still haven't evolved past the thing where we think that we have to blow up, brown people why? What are we doing that for? It's so fucking weird to me. That's like an acceptable thing to adult human beings, like grown ass adults. I mean, we teach our kids all the time, like, don't hit your friends, right? Don't bite your friends, use your words. And then like our leaders blow shit up for profit and murder people for profit. And everybody just accepts that as it's normal. And that's just the best we can do. That's just how things work. And no.
I think we've been desensitized to it. I mean, you hear people like blame school shootings and stuff on video games, and that's not what I'm saying. But I do think like, nonstop violent movies, nonstop violence in our culture. And then you see it like happening in our schools and you see it happening everywhere. Like people lose their respect for life, I think, after long enough. And then when it comes to foreign wars, we've kind of accepted that as something else. Like it's not murder. We're not killing people over there. They're, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, the enemy. And it's so propagandized with Memorial Day and, these holidays we have and the reverence for, the soldiers who have died for our freedom.
Every sporting event is like a circle jerk for imperialism. It's so gross.
Yeah. So, I mean, my sister is in the Army and I did everything I could to try to convince her not to go. I remember she's 6 years younger than me, so she just joined a few years ago. But I took her out to breakfast and I said, I know you think that you're going to be landing on Normandy and punching a Nazi in the face, but that's not what you're going to be doing. You're going to be blowing up a neighborhood to enrich some Raytheon contractor and prop up central banks and all this other shit that you don't care about. You're going to be killing innocent people. And I've been very blatant about that forever. Like this last Memorial Day on Twitter, I was going hard into it. And I think like on Memorial Day, those are the days we've got to go the hardest and say like, no, this is bullshit. And you're not spitting on the graves of the people who died. What I'm doing is I'm saying they were lying to you about why you were fighting this war. You were not fighting this war to stop the spread of communism or fascism or radical jihadism or whatever you've been told it is. You were fighting this war to enrich the filth of this world and keep them propped up. That's the only reason you were doing it. And they're going to coat it with all this bullshit, of patriotism and freedom or whatever. But it's all lies.
We're not honoring them by lying and like whitewashing history and then not doing what we can to prevent, the continuation of the military industrial complex and, making more like people like victims of war.
There's that great clip of Mike Gravel when he's exposing Hillary and Obama and Biden.
Yes.
He says right at the end, he's like, what's worse than dead soldiers? More dead soldiers dying in vain or whatever, It's so true. Like,
One of the
I mean,
greatest
to keep
moments on a
looking at-
debate stage. That whole debate, he was on fire.
Yeah.
Oh, he was taking them down. All of them. All of them. This,
And
like,
he was
here
this
comes Mike
nobody
Gravel.
from he's this nobody from Alaska, and he's just
Yeah,
murdering them
from
on
fucking
stage. It's so
Alaska.
great.
Yeah. And he like murders all of them. It was so good, which again, I hate Trump, but watching him dismantle like Jeb Bush, and that was fun.
Yeah.
That was good, wholesome fun for the whole family. Like watching it again, that doesn't make him good, but it's really fun to watch those fuckwads get exposed on stage on national TV. That was fun for me. It's like when the president of Azerbaijan called out the BBC reporter about their treatment of journalists versus where's Julian Assange. I love that shit. Doesn't mean I like the president of Azerbaijan, but I love that. I love when people get called out on their bullshit and their hypocrisies.
Yeah.
It's good. That's good stuff.
Yeah, I
like
remember when Trump, I forget what, I think they were talking about Russia and their human rights violations, and he said, "Are we so innocent?" This was back in like 2016 or something, and everyone was freaking out about it, and I was like, "Where is he wrong?" You know, I mean, it's true. Like when horrible people point out inconsistencies, it's almost funnier than when good people do it. You know.
Yeah.
Well, that reminds me of when Trump was still running, I believe he called into a Fox morning show, the one with Peter Doocy, or not Peter Doocy, his father, Steve Doocy. I think he's one of the hosts on it. But Trump was calling in during his campaign, his first campaign, and they were talking about terrorism, the war on terror, and Trump just comes right out and says something to the effect of, you know, we shouldn't just kill them, we should kill their families, everybody in their family. And you know, you could like hear the recoil in the hosts, and almost like a gasp and a hush and like a stutter, I think, from Steve Doocy, like, did I just hear what I heard? And but in that response, like, they're denying a fundamental truth that is actually what's happening. Trump is not presenting anything new in that situation. Like, he's actually saying what's already happening, and, you know, in his own crude way, that he plans on continuing that, and to an extent he did.
Yeah, it's the same thing we were talking about earlier with the taking the oil from Syria. You know, it's just blatant Americanism. Like, you know, it's like the most honest American president we ever had in the last, I don't know,
maybe
long time.
I mean, unintentionally, I think.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, because he doesn't know when to stop talking, which that's good, actually. For a president, I like that. Actually, that's a good quality.
He's the opposite of Biden. Like, Biden forgets what he's saying halfway through a sentence. Trump would not know when to stop.
Yeah. Oh, my favorite thing too is that we're pretending that Biden's any different than Trump. Like, oh, he's worse in many ways. Biden's worse. Like, the media is protecting him. Like, it's, y'all. They do like stories on like which dog pooped in the White House hallway and what color was Jill Biden's scrunchie, and oh, look at these cute cardboard hearts she's got on the White House lawn for Valentine's Day. And I mean, he's getting away with some genuinely abhorrent policies, and I mean, it's unreal. And like, you know, he can illegally bomb Syria. Nobody talks about it. When Trump bombed Syria, people talked about that shit. Like, it was covered on CNN. It was, I mean, they were cheering it on and calling him presidential because they're all fucking warmongers, but they were at least covering it. But Joe Biden does it and they don't really talk about it. They cover for him every step of the way. And they've been doing it the whole time. They did it with the Hunter Biden story. And that's what makes him more dangerous, I think, than Donald Trump, is that there's this level of like cover being run for Joe Biden that would no, Trump would never get away with this shit. I mean, there are still kids in cages and nobody's talking about it. More kids in cages, and there's still like whistleblowers coming out and exposing sexual assault, sexual abuse, child abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. They're starving them at some points. It's inhumane conditions. It's dirty. It's, you know what I'm saying? And nobody talks about that shit. Where's AOC? Where's her fence? Where she gotta cry? We gotta get the tears going again. Where's that? There's none of that shit.
Yeah, to me, I mean, it's certain issues slide when a Democrat is in there, and then other issues slide when a Republican is in there. So like when Trump was in there, everyone, all the right wingers thought all the pedophiles were getting locked up and their gun rights were more protected than ever. And, their taxes were I guess their taxes were going down, but spending wasn't going down. They thought like everything was great and dandy. And what's so funny to me is, to date, Trump has still spent more bullshit money on COVID than Biden has so far. I'm sure Biden's going to pass him, but, he spent $2.7 trillion on the CARES Act and then 2.4 trillion on that bill right before Christmas. I think Biden has still only spent 1.9 trillion so far. Like, I know there's been bills that have been proposed, but none of them have passed yet. This new infrastructure bill looks terrible. It might pass. I don't know.
Oh.
But it's
But
so
Biden
funny.
still has a lot more time to do that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
to pass
sure.
him.
But what I'm saying is the Republicans are freaking out about the debt again and the spending and the whatever, when Biden so far has still spent less than Trump did his last year. And when Trump was in there, it was all like, oh, he has to do this, like has to make these sacrifices. We have to give Sudan
Yes.
1.4 trillion, or sorry, $1.4 billion or whatever to, like there are all these excuses. And then as soon as it's Biden, it's like, oh my God, can't believe this is happening. And then it's the opposite, with Trump in there. Like when Trump, like you said, when Trump was in there, immigration was such a central issue of the Democratic primary. Like it was the number one thing everyone was talking about. And now it's just gone. Like nothing has changed.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? That's what drives me nuts is like, like they literally called them concentration camps when Trump was in office.
Yeah.
And then the second Biden is inaugurated, it's their, what do they call, overflow facilities or something, influx facilities or something like that. And there's no more outrage. They don't tweet about it. They don't talk about it. There's no defund ICE. It's, and that's what drives me nuts is that it's the team sports, y'all. It's so annoying. There's no intellectual consistency whatsoever. None whatsoever.
It's just the issue of the day and then on to the next one and then the next one until it's all forgotten about, or at least they want us to forget about.
Did you see a couple months ago? It was so funny. If you had told me this in 2018, I would have been like, no. But Ted Cruz was going to the overflow facilities to film them and show the horrible conditions inside.
Stop.
You guys did you not see this?
I don't think I did.
I didn't.
Oh my God. Yeah. Just look it up, like Ted Cruz overflow facilities. Like he's there with a camera and there are people there blocking him and trying to keep him from getting the camera into the room where people are, piled up together on the floors or whatever in this crammed facility. And then AOC is in Washington, like talking about what a great job Joe Biden has done so far or whatever. And I was just like, if you had told me this 2 years ago that Ted Cruz was going to be at the border angry about the conditions there and that AOC was in Washington defending the president, saying that everything was fine, I've been like, wait a second here. But it was happening in real life. And I mean, when it can be that stark, like Ted fucking Cruz and AOC switching positions like that, I mean, that's some
amazing,
crazy shit.
That's cartoon stuff. We live in a cartoon. To quote Steve Quickenen, we live in a cartoon. That is cartoon stuff. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But and it's like that. Like it's not just immigration. It's not just the kids in concentration camps. It's like on every issue. Like the whole. It's fine when my team does it. And if the other team does it, it's literally the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of humankind. And we have to be very dramatic about it. And, it's like, you can find video after video. I mentioned the vaccine one earlier. Like there's this whole montage of like Ilhan Omar and Ro Khanna, like, we can't trust this president. This vaccine isn't safe. And it's
Kamala Harris.
Yeah. It's like a whole,
she said it during the debate. Yeah. Like I will not take the vaccine if Trump says to take it. And here we are.
Yeah.
Just so infantile.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the key right there, how infantile it's become, because I feel like we used to sort of debate the actual issues. We would talk about the budget or what war we were going into or what tax brackets we wanted to adjust or whatever. Like we were having actual policy-based discussions. Now it's about like banning Dr. Seuss and critical race theory and it's just like, what is going on here? Like, I mean, it's just become a culture war. There's no,
I think
there's
that's
no
by design.
substance to it. Yeah. Oh,
It's by
sure.
design. I think
Yeah.
that well, because it's they use these like emotionally driven issues that they can use to keep us divided and fighting amongst ourselves, so that we're not paying attention to like the actual. I mean, and that's not to discredit issues of race or issue. There's all of those things actually do matter. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm
Well,
saying that
Dr. Seuss doesn't so much, but
no,
the other,
well, no, but
yeah.
but we can
No,
have
I
that
know.
conversation,
Legacy.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but they're like, that's not, I'm not trying to discredit like those specific issues, but I think that it's like it's being used very much as a weapon against us. They're using it to keep us divided, distract us. They like inflame it. It's the way that it's sold to us. It's narrative management, and they're very good at it. Like, Steve, I hate to quote him twice in a row, but he also says that we're the most propagandized country on earth. He's absolutely right. And it's a different kind of propaganda. It's more covert, but it's also constantly in your face. There's no escaping it, and nobody is immune to it. Everybody has their blind spots and all of that stuff. But we can't even get people to like recognize that it exists. And we still have people, like we have people on the left who like are cheering the intelligence community currently.
Yeah.
When did that become a thing? Like it's just really effective, and
Yeah, but
it's scary.
you saw
Under
their ad,
Obama.
didn't you, Misty? It was so woke.
The CIA ad.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, it is by design because it enables them to become more and more similar while they distract us with those things, because then they don't have to actually disagree on anything. I mean, the bills I was just talking about, you look at both of those bills that passed under Trump and the one under Biden, like 80%, 90% of the people. Well, actually, the first one, let's see, the CARES Act, there were only like 3 people who voted against it.
Mhm.
And then the one before Christmas, there were like, 40 people who voted against it. And
I
then
don't remember.
it was about the same this last. I mean, so like all this, we're arguing about Dr. Seuss or, satanic shoes or whatever. And they're passing these bills unanimously. Like, I mean, both sides. And I mean, it's amazing. They're so successful at it. Like that's what I was kind of talking about earlier with the distraction thing when it comes to alternative media. I think that the establishment is very smart with this. Like they know that if they can get the sheep to herd themselves, that's much more effective, because it's hard to keep everybody under control, like through force. So it's kind of the difference between the book 1984 and Brave New World. 1984 is like a lot of strict controls. Everyone's monitored all the time, where Brave New World is like you give people what they want, you stimulate them, and they'll give their rights away. So if you can lean more toward the Brave New World side, it's a lot easier to keep everyone in line, because they're not going to question anything. They're not going to poke at anything. They're not going to, they're going to be content with what they have and not question what's happening. So I think if
you don't have to devote resources to that strict control,
it's bread and circuses.
Funnel them elsewhere.
Yeah. So I mean, I think to the maximum amount that they can do that, they will try to do that, and they'll do it through cultural wars and distractions, or convincing us that we need them, or that there's this boogeyman that they're protecting us from. So that's like COVID, the war on terrorism. And then like, if you opposed any of these disgusting bills they were passing, you were the enemy of the people. Like Rand Paul was the worst guy who's ever walked the face of the earth, because he was daring to like, vote against these, or, threaten to block them or whatever. And you look at the bill and it's fucking horrible. I mean, you're getting like nothing out of it. It's going to foreign countries, to the military, to the corporations or whatever. But, if you stand in the way, you're the worst person in the world. So all that type of stuff, where you can get people to almost beg the government to be more authoritarian so that it'll take care of you. I think that's the most effective way, and they realize that, and they're pretty good at it.
And often those big bills, what they'll do is they'll put like a bunch of really shitty stuff in it, but then they'll also put in stuff that they know that you need. People are desperate, and so they'll throw in something like unemployment protections or whatever, like they did in the CARES Act. And so, and then because what I found really interesting, and I have to give Jimmy Dore credit for this, because he had Ro Khanna on his show, and it'll probably be the last time Ro Khanna comes on. He's come on many times before, but I don't think he'll come on again because Jimmy thoroughly dismantled his argument because he did this exact thing. He went on there and Jimmy Dore was like confronting him about the CARES Act. Why would you vote for that? Are you kidding me? It's like a huge upward transfer of wealth. Why would you vote for that? And Ro Khanna brought up some bullshit, like little sprinkle that they threw in there, specifically so that somebody like Ro Khanna would be able to use it as a justification for voting for some terrible bill. But look, we got the, like these people were desperate. They really needed some help. So we threw them some crumbs while we're shoveling money to the top 1%. And so that's exactly what they do. They'll throw in like these little, like stickers on there, a little glitter to distract you. While they're passing an enormous amount of garbage. And you can't, it's impossible for like the normal, every average day, like average person to be able to read through those bills. Like some of them are like huge. I mean, some of them, they don't, the people who are voting on them don't even read them. They're 5,000 pages and they get them 2 hours in advance.
Yeah. The other thing they do is they'll name it the Stop Lynching Single Grandmothers Act or something. So like if you vote against that, like you want to lynch single grandmothers or whatever, and it's like, or they'll name it the freedom for whatever. They'll come up with these ridiculous names for them. So if you vote against them, it's bad optics immediately, and it works. I mean, because people are fucking retarded. So
yeah, Snowden's talked about that. One of these acts, I think it actually pops up on YouTube when you're posting a video and it asks about, is this suitable for kids? And they have to ask this to be in compliance with some kind of like child protective act. I don't know. I forget the exact name. Mm-hmm. But buried within, or not even buried within that act, I think very quickly into reading it, you see that it's really about surveillance. It's just given that name and sort of like an oblique relationship with actually doing that, so that all these other like surveillance measures that are, much more realistic threats can just get pushed through because like who wants to, as Snowden says, I'm paraphrasing, but who wants to stand against protecting children online?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember the most recent blatant example of that. So I was a Tulsi supporter in 2020, and I remember it was toward the end of her campaign. She tweeted something out about how she voted for the Anti-Lynching Act. And I was like, what? That's not a crime already, or it's not a federal crime or whatever. So then Justin Amash voted against it. And he's someone I've been following for a while, and I really respect his opinion. So I was like, I got to look into this. I don't know what's going on here. So I read through his tweet thread about it, and then I read the bill, and the bill was just complete bullshit. The bill, what it did is it expanded penalties for minor offenses like property damage and bruises and cuts to people. So it was expanding mandatory minimums while lynching was already a federal hate crime. But they decided to try to pass this bill. It went through the Senate right after the whole George Floyd thing, so it was very emotionally charged. And I remember Rand Paul blocked the bill, and there was like this extremely emotional exchange between him and Cory Booker and Kamala Harris and all these different people. Nobody read the bill. Like no one who is typing all their opinions on Twitter. Like I had the fucking bill in front of me. I was like, guys, you need to read this fucking bill. It doesn't do anything to change how lynching is addressed throughout the country. What this does is it expands mandatory minimums for minor offenses. But you name it the anti-lynching bill, and then you pass it at a time when everything's emotionally high strung. Reading the bill or caring about the ramifications of the legislation just goes out the window. I mean, it's like the Patriot Act, like, we were just attacked, and you don't want terrorists to be able to, communicate with each other. And sorry, my phone went off for a second.
No,
there.
You're fine.
So like with the Patriot Act, you don't want, terrorists to be able to communicate with each other without being monitored, right? Like you care about the next 9/11, right? Like you care about being a patriot, right? And if you if you stand against it, you get vilified as the scum of the earth,
Well, that's what I was talking
blah,
about
blah, blah.
earlier, like with COVID. Like, it doesn't matter what you think of COVID. It doesn't matter. You could think it's a complete hoax. You could think it's the worst pandemic to ever hit the planet Earth. I don't care. What's not negotiable is that they're using it to strip you of your rights.
Right.
They're using it to push authoritarianism. That's not that's not debatable. That's what's happening. And that's, I don't, but because it's so emotionally driven, and because people are so emotionally invested in the narrative and the storyline, that, and they do that on lots of things there, and they always use fear. That's why, like 9/11 Patriot Act, like, you're scared, so you're willing to hand over your rights because they tell you it's for your safety, and you want to feel good, you want to feel better, like you're freaked out. And so it's like this warm comfort of, okay, they're going to protect me. They're not going to protect you.
No.
It's not what that's about.
Yeah.
But they're very good at like using those emotional issues to pass horrendous shit.
What's so funny too is, the right is what came up with the Patriot Act, sort of. They were the kind of the ones who pushed it. And I mean, everyone voted for it, but it was, or not everyone, but a lot of people on both sides voted for it. But in general, it's kind of a right-wing idea, but it's so antithetical to everything that the right preaches about, like individual liberty and, individualism and freedom from oppressive big government or whatever.
Yeah, they're all small government, right?
Yeah. And then with COVID, talk about corporate centralization of wealth and power in our economy. A lot of the left is like going along with it. And I was like, wait, I thought you guys were against corporate power and against, being under the boot of fascism, basically. And it's just so weird seeing both of those things. Like, it seems like the side that's supposed to be against that idea is what kind of pushes it through and gives it momentum in society. And that just boggles my mind.
There's a lot of that. We just talked about it earlier with the squad. And like the left pushing authoritarianism and censorship, and they're imperialists, and it's like this weird like shift of, I don't know. It's fucking crazy that people, they're able to convince you to not just vote against your own interests, but think against your own interests.
Yeah.
Like they're really able to convince you that doing things against your own interests and believing in it's unbelievable how effective they are. What do you like? I'm curious, like what's your take on electoral politics right now? Because I'm like, I'm not an electoral politics person at all. I don't think I mean, maybe at a local level, but I'm done.
So I think, like state down, I think Congress is kind of a lost cause. Justin Amash blackpilled me on Congress, like just following him the last like year he was in there and how fucking hopeless. I mean, we'd have to elect 200 people to the House to make any sort of difference. So, and I don't think they'll let us, I think.
No, we have a rigged election system. That's not ever.
Yeah. I mean, and even if we could somehow get the votes, like the media propaganda campaign against them will be so ridiculous. Like it won't be allowed to happen. So I think, I'm a decentralization guy, so I think that states need to pick their rights up again and be like, you know what, you can't tell us to do this. You have no right. I mean, some of them have done it with like sanctuary cities for immigration. Some states have done it with the Second Amendment. They've said, fuck the ATF. I want to see them start doing it with the IRS and the Department of Homeland Security and, just with whatever, saying like, no, fuck you. You can't be here. You can't do this. We're our own sovereign state. This is unconstitutional. The Constitution only gives you the right to enforce constitutional law. Outside of that, the states are allowed to govern themselves, so something like that. So at that level, like, voting for governor, voting for state representatives, voting for even more localized things like your town, city council, whatever, like I think that you can still make a difference there. Depending on where you are, like if you're in Los Angeles, maybe not, maybe you're not going to make a change there. But if you're in Wyoming and you're in some town where you can vote for your sheriff and choose who he is or something, like, yeah, I think you're actually making a substantial difference. When it comes to federal politics, I still think there's value in running a candidate for something who is speaking truth to power, just because that's how I got red pilled. It was Rand Paul in 2016. He's the guy who kind of woke me up. And he's been a massive disappointment in a lot of ways since then. But he's the guy who kind of started to get me paying attention. Bernie Sanders did that for a lot of people. Ron Paul did that for a lot of people. So I don't think that there's zero value in that. I don't think they can win. I think the idea of like trying to run someone as a libertarian who could somehow win and dismantle the system from the top down, that's a fairy tale. But getting someone out there who can go on Joe Rogan, Tim Pool, Jimmy Dore, Steven Crowder, like whatever, like all these giant underground platforms that get more views than the mainstream media now, I think that there's value to that. So I'm friends with Dave Smith. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's talking about running in 2024. I absolutely don't think he can win. And even if he did, I think they'd JFK him immediately. But I just think that he can talk about the war on terrorism and the COVID regime and the war on drugs and the surveillance state and, you know, all these important issues and get people to think in a different way. And then that might have effects throughout communities, throughout states where people realize, you know what, hey, yeah, this government is horrible. We need to take back our sovereignty. We need to stop letting this giant oligarchy tell us what to do. So yeah, I think like at a local, and I'll still vote, you know, for Congress and president, like why not? It takes 5 minutes. You only have to do it once every 2 years. So who cares? Like, yeah, I'll go check a box. But I think what you do in between checking the box is more important than how you check the box. You know, I mean, how you live, how you try to influence other people to think. I think that's what really matters. You know, I really live my principles. Like it's not just some metaphysical realm that I preach about and then I just go live however I want. Like I live well within my means. I try to only buy from places that I approve of, you know, their practices or whatever. And you know, I'm not in debt. I'm trying not to fuel any of our debt fueled economy, you know, through the banking system we have or anything. So I have gold and silver for backup if the dollar goes south, you know. So I try to actually live what I preach. And I think that's way more valuable than just checking a box every 2 years and telling people all this philosophical stuff that you don't actually do.
And all of what you just described it's really just common sense, but it's been marginalized so that so many people would listen to you say what you just said and think, oh, this guy is some kind of like doomsday prepper or something like that.
Conspiracy theorist. He's you know.
And the fact that common sense has been made into, you know, crazy, that's, I mean, it's darkly ironic, but it's also dangerous because without common sense, we're all fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, I had Kim Iverson on my show a few months ago and we talked after the stream for like 2 hours, and there's so much we agree on, especially like on a lifestyle level. Like if you throw politics out the window, and people want us to think we're like complete polar opposites so that we have nothing in common. It's so far from the truth. I mean, I had you on my show, Misty. We didn't disagree on anything we talked about really. We talked for an hour, and
even if we disagree, that's okay. Like
yeah,
we can have those disagreements. That's fine. I think that like generally speaking, we want many of the same things.
Yeah.
And I think that that's more important. Like we can have the disagreements on how we get there, but we both want to get there. Let's start with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of these political labels or parties or philosophies, they draw lines like, you know, almost they dehumanize people who disagree with you. And I just think that's so wrong, because I've been a human my whole life, and I had a lot of different thoughts back in the day. I mean, I was in fucking neocon, you know, in high school. I was still a human, you know. I am very good friends with people who are liberals, leftists, communists, socialists, you know, nationalists, whatever. Like they're all humans, and they just don't all have the same exact opinions that I do. And a lot of these, you know, the other thing is like, I feel like a lot of people don't work with other people. A lot of the online social media types, a lot of them seem like they're working from home or they're working in a cubicle or something. Like I've worked shoulder to shoulder out in the field with people who completely disagree with my politics. Like, you know, far right-wing Christians like made up most of the first place I ever worked. And then I worked with a bunch of Mexican immigrants replacing roofs in Denver, Colorado. And then I did volunteer work in Arizona with a bunch of college hippie lefties, you know. So, I mean, like I've just been out there working with people, and that really humanizes them to you, because if you're not working with them, and if you don't know them, and if you don't live with them, then you can just paint a picture of who they are, just around their beliefs or whatever. And that's the entirety of their existence to you. If you're actually out there swinging a hammer or digging a trench or hanging drywall with them, like that just puts things on a whole different plane. And you realize, hey, we're all people and we're all trying to figure this out. And we've all been led in different directions from the things that have happened to us through our lives. Because I believe belief is involuntary. I don't think people choose to believe what they want. Like, that's ridiculous. I never was like, I want to be a libertarian and then decided like, okay, here I go. Like, I was led there from the experiences I had, the things that I was convinced were true. Same with my religious beliefs, whatever. Like, none of it was intentional. And this idea that you can intentionally choose what your beliefs are, I don't buy. Like, I think you are going to have experiences and meet people, and it's going to lead you to certain conclusions. And it's really just about being honest with yourself and honest with other people and trying to have these conversations and figure out what truth is. Because I got here from somewhere else because I listened to other people and tried to be honest with myself. And I could be wrong where I am now. You could be wrong. Who knows? Maybe both of us are wrong and someone else is right. The only way we're ever going to find out or get closer to the truth is if we talk to people who are honest with themselves and disagree with us.
Well, and what is truth? Because what's truth to one person is not truth to another person. And I think that so many people are like, you have to conform. Like, if you don't conform to their way of thinking, then you're the enemy. And that's a lot of, I see it a lot on the left. I don't know how it is more on the right, but on the left, there's a ton of these people who they like, if you even like just me talking to you, people will get mad and be like, oh my God, I can't believe you talked to him. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, there are a lot of people who like, if anybody to the right of Bernie Sanders is like a literal Nazi to them. And it's ridiculous. And I don't know if it's the same way on the right, but it's like this.
That question is so stupid, because why would you talk to him? Because 99% of the time, the follow-up is, well, have you ever talked to him? Have you ever talked to Reed? No, I would never talk to that guy. Yeah. So what's the fucking point of this conversation even? What is this? This is again like infantile, just back and forth nattering. And that's, so
like, I don't care if you're scared to talk to people that disagree with you. I'm not scared to talk to people who disagree with me. Like, that's not something I'm scared of. There are lots of people in the world and they all have very different opinions, and that's okay. That's kind of the beauty of humanity. We don't all have to like, go on vacation together and dinner party and like, babysit each other's kids. It's not a thing that we have to do. We just have to, like, I'm just willing to have conversations. And it's like, it's amazing to me, like being on the show with Ryan Dawson. Like, you would think that I was Satan incarnate. And y'all do realize that me being on a show with somebody doesn't then transpose all of their thoughts, opinions, and beliefs onto me. That's not how that works. I don't become Ryan Dawson. I'm still me. I just happen to be on the same show with him.
Yeah, it's like when Jill Stein was caught in that, or not caught, because I don't believe that. When photographs
sitting
surfaced
at the same table
as Putin, right? It's like all of a sudden she is Putin.
Yeah.
It's such a ridiculous transference. It's like it's a pathology at this point. A widespread one, I would say.
The other thing is, I have had people on my show that I do not agree with on certain topics, and some people get upset with me, like, you didn't call out so and so on this issue. It's like, okay, well, I didn't really want to talk about that issue that time. Like, I'm having Abby Martin on sometime the next couple of weeks. And I want to talk to her about Israel and Palestine and terrorism and the CIA. And I don't want to talk to her about Medicare for all. Like, okay, I disagree with her on it. So what? Like, that's not going to be interesting. Like, hey, Abby Martin, like, let's talk about this economic issue that I disagree with you on. Like, why? It's just dumb. And I'm going to have Tulsi Gabbard on, I think, either the end of this month or next month or sometime. Same thing. Like, why should I just talk
to her? Tell her to come on the vigil.
I'll tell her. But I don't know, like, or if I have some like right-wing guy on, like, you didn't call him out on immigration, or you didn't, fuck you, like do your own show and
Right?
invite
Yeah.
them on and talk about
Yeah.
whatever that issue is that I didn't
Somebody
call
was
them
mad
out
at me. I was told that was mad at me the other day because we had Jimmy Dore on the vigil. And we didn't like drill him on stuff that, because there's things to disagree with Jimmy Dore on, but
Yeah.
I don't know who needs to hear this. But the Action for Assange vigil, where we're there trying to like advocate for whistleblowers and press freedom, that's not like the place for a hard hitting interview. That's a place
Right.
for us to talk about whistleblowers and press freedom, and let our guests talk about whatever they want to for a little bit and plug whatever they've got going on. It's just do your own fucking show. You're right.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. And I would love that. Actually, we need lots of voices. If we're going to
Yeah.
combat the propaganda that's being thrown our direction, we need lots of voices. So please do start a show. I'm not saying that just to be glib, but I'm not a journalist. I'm not like a professional content creator. I'm just some chick in Ohio who has opinions and a web camera. I have some cool friends. And I have a lot of like things I want to rant about. So that's I do this mostly selfishly because it gives me a place to vent. I'm not
There's a time and a place to have someone on your show, since we're talking about that, and have a debate and actually go at one another, or have a panel of people go at one another debating something in the real form of a debate where there's a proposition put forth. And I'm not saying like an artificial like high school forensics type debate, but like there's somebody's arguing for something, somebody's arguing against something, and it's not just for that juxtaposition, but because the issue matters. And like, let's have a substantive conversation about it that comes from both sides, or however many sides there are. And that never happens. The presidential debates are not debates.
Right.
There's nothing to debate about that.
I would much rather listen to Peter Schiff and Richard Wolff do a Joe Rogan podcast together for 3 hours and just talk about stuff that they disagree with, instead of like a formal debate. Because I feel like formal debates are not really designed to try to sway the other person, because both parties in the debate already have their minds made up. What they're trying to do is get a really good zinger or a really good point across. And so by default, you're just getting a little glimpse of whatever their ideology is. You're not getting a full picture. It's just like, oh wow, Peter Schiff made a really great point, or Richard Wolff made this zinger. And
I should clarify that I didn't mean like in the formal sense of a debate, but like there's actually something to be discussed. There's actually substance being discussed, and not people just literally screaming at each other.
Debate doesn't leave any room for like the changing of one's opinion after being presented with new evidence. That's not a thing you can do during a debate. That's not the point of it. Like the point is to win the debate. Right. And so once you start putting like winning, that changes things. That changes the conversation. And you can't have like a legitimate conversation. Yeah,
so I agree with you. I mean, I think conversations about things we disagree on are really important. But I just think, and I'm not saying you were saying this, but I just think that the formal debate format almost has to die. It's like old fashioned. I mean, because people listen to podcasts now. And so, they'll hear something about socialism or capitalism or fascism or, whatever it is that they had no idea about before, because it was just handed to them in a paragraph of a textbook. And then they heard some debate in high school about it, where now you can have like the Joe Rogan style podcast where you actually talk about something for 3 hours. And that's what like opened my mind up on a ton of things, was listening to people actually talk them out. So I don't know. I mean, like that, I was in an official debate 2 months ago, and it was terrible. I hated it because it was just that like whole zinger, like, good point thing. And we came away from it and I didn't think it was very good. It's like, we should have just like talked about it instead. Like you should have asked me, hey, I got this problem with capitalism. Will you explain what you think that means? And then I could ask you about socialism. And, like that's way more effective, because I think the audience also puts their guard down when you're that way. Like, because when it's a debate, like you're going into it like, oh, I hope this guy who supports my position just absolutely destroys this other guy. Where if you're like, hey, I want to hear what you think about this, then that puts everyone who's on your side into the listening mode. Like, okay, what is he gonna say? Like, is he gonna, So I think I don't know. I really love like all these shows that are coming out, even if not enough people listen to them or whatever. Like, it's just great because you never know whose mind you're going to change. Just like the plumber who's listening to it while he's working, or the mom on her way home from dropping.
That's what I love about Magnus's show. Like he like actively seeks out people from differing positions and brings them together on an issue that they agree on. And so there's no arguing. Like that's not what his show's about. His show's about bringing people together on things that they agree on. And I think that that's awesome. There needs to be more of that.
Yeah,
because I think
he has guns.
He does have guns, and he's like a crazy racist, Nazi, white supremacist,
like
homophobe.
Homophobe. Yeah. I mean, come on. I mean, I can't even go there because it's amazing. Like I still to this day get shit for just like talking to Magnus, for like being friends with him, for he showed up to my Assange protests.
Yeah.
He showed up to the fuck censorship protest and the force the vote protest, even though like it's not even like he'll show up to stuff that he maybe isn't entirely on board for, just like as act of solidarity. We're friends. We're gonna be hanging out with him at the End the Damn Wars protests. We're doing like corresponding Assange stuff and fuck censorship. Like I don't have to agree with Magnus on everything to be willing to work with him on the things where we do agree. That's like controversial to say.
People react like he physically harmed somebody or like killed somebody.
He like murdered somebody's grandma on like a live stream.
Yeah. It's like
he's amazing.
He's Satan embodied, and it's so ridiculous. It's like,
especially if you know Magnus.
Yeah.
It's funny, the right and the left, they tend to have like their issues that you can't touch. Then libertarians tend to pride themselves in saying like, oh, we'll talk about anything, but it's not true. I found out what the sacred cow is, and that's age of consent. Like you cannot talk about that because instantly like the wood chipper memes come out. So my friend Clint, who has the show Liberty Lockdown, I don't know if you guys know who he is, but he had a guy named Thaddeus Russell on his show. And then he also had Eliza Blue, who's a survivor of sexual trafficking, and they were talking about like age of consent, what makes sense, because I mean, let's be honest, we all know 19-year-olds who had sex with 17-year-olds in high school. Like everyone's acting like that doesn't exist, but pretty much everyone I know was either underage or slightly over the age, having with I mean, it's something that totally exists. But he got canceled so hard by so many people for just having that conversation. And I don't know. I'm kind of in a special lane where I like I was talking earlier, like I just welcome that criticism and that anger and that fury whenever I go somewhere that someone doesn't want me to go. So he was actually over here at my place when that was going on, and I had him on the show in person, and we were talking about it. And just fuck these people. Like they're so useless, and they're so. I mean, they don't have a life. That's what it is. Like they don't have anything going on in their own lives. So selective outrage over what other people are doing is what fuels them and keeps them going. They can go fuck themselves. I mean,
yes, I agree with that. It's very reactionary, which is, super annoying. And it's not like based on any logic or reason. It's like completely emotionally driven. And it's, again, very like team sport driven. Like, I think a lot of these people, like just, it's not even that they believe in the thing. It's just that they think they do, or that they've that's what their team is going with, so they just go along with it, and that's really disturbing too, because it's a lot of surface level thinking. They're supporting things that I don't even think that they've genuinely thought about, like had legitimate thoughts on, you know what I mean?
And a lot of it's so shallow too. I mean, I wish there was a way I could like mass reduce my Twitter notifications, but so much of what comes across in my notifications, like the banners that come across, it's like one person will go on and on and on about something for like hours sometimes, and to the point where I just have to log out of Twitter because I can't take it anymore. And they're talking about like, it's like they're trying to talk about like some kind of like stance on domestic policy, but they're not even like all the way there with domestic policy. And they're like light years away from foreign policy and like understanding you know, like even having any kind of like historical context for, you know, foreign policy, and then, you know, their domestic policy that, you know, is the fashion or the flavor of their day.
And how it's all connected.
Yeah, right. And it's like you said, Reed, like the only conclusion you can really draw from that is that they don't have a life, and they just, you know, the dopamine fix keeps going every time they tweet something. And, you know, probably people are responding to some extent out there somewhere, but I don't check. But there's so much of that, and it's like wasted words.
A lot of that's bot farm stuff though too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. A lot of that.
My philosophy for Twitter has changed. When I first got on there like a year ago or whatever, I was like, oh, I'm going to change people's minds and we're going to have discussions. And that fell apart pretty quickly. And at this point, I mostly am just there to like get people's attention. And then if they want to find out more, they can follow me on YouTube, listen to my podcast or whatever. So it's more about like putting out these statements that are really stark and, you know, that are true, but they're just like, there's no bullshit to it. And they're very strong. Or it's the other way. It's like complete bullshit, just making fun of something. And I think it's been more effective. I've gotten more followers, and then that gives me more people coming to my YouTube channel. And, you know, it also has people start following people that I follow. Because like this whole idea of like trying to win a Twitter battle with someone, like, I mean, it's just futile. I gave that up last year because I did get into like 30 tweet battles with people about interest rates or something. And it was just like, okay, this is stupid. Like, I'm not, you know, I might be arguing with a bot too. That's the other thing. Like, you know, I mean, back then I didn't know how to find them very easily. So
no, and they do. That's like part of the reason it keeps you distracted. If you're arguing with a bot all day,
it's like a hologram of Paul Krugman or something, just like in a room somewhere, just responding to you.
Well, it's David Brock too. David Brock's like the king of the bot farm, or Sally Albright. Yeah, there's a lot of them, and it's, you know, painful. It's so painful. But I mean, Twitter is a tool. Like social media is a tool. That's why,
what I was trying to say earlier is that unfortunately, we rely on it. And, you know, we were talking about the monopoly it has over us at this point back then. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like you're right, Misty, it is a tool. And for the kind of the work we do and the conversations we're trying to have, like we do rely on it. And that's sort of like it's a Faustian bargain in a sense.
Yeah. And I can say it is also effective too. Like I've had numerous people say, you know, hey, I learned so much about the Assange case because you talk about it. Or, hey, I learned about, like, you know, that people learned about like the gas attacks in Syria from like, we're able to find that kind of information. And I've had, you know, people apologize to me like for, you know, I thought you were too hard on Bernie, but now I get it. Like, I think that it is an effective tool. You know, it's just a tool, but I think that if you use it correctly, you can definitely figure out a way to get your message across in a lot of ways, and also just call attention to things. Like you mentioned Eliza Blue, I got her to speak for Assange, which was cool. I mean, she's got a huge following, so it's like that. Like if you can do that kind of thing to get like awareness or your message out, you should always try to do that. Yeah,
I've also noticed like you can word things a certain way where you won't get banned, but you can still convey the exact same message. Because I've still never, I don't know how, but I've still never received like a 12-hour timeout on Twitter. And I think it's just because I've figured out how to say something, and you'll read it and you'll totally get it. And you'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. But then you actually see, I didn't use any key words that'll get you nuked. Usually, occasionally I do, but it's a game. Like you got to figure out exactly what you can get away with. Because the ultimate shock factor or you know, degree of truth that you can say something with will get you more attention and more people to listen to you. But then you also got to be careful, because if you go too hard, then you lose
your platform.
Yeah,
and then you're not effective at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Real talk. Okay, so you've been super generous with your time. I appreciate you coming on. I know it's late, and I know you know, probably want to get out of here. But yeah, thanks for coming on. This was fun. I
Yeah,
think
thank
that,
you.
we definitely need to do more of this stuff, and cross pollinate, where we can. It sounds really weird, but
That's a good
we need
metaphor.
to build coalitions. Like that's just, there's no way around it. We need the numbers. We can have our disagreements. We can hate each other later. There's plenty of time for that. But we need, like, there's no way we can take down the system that's killing all of us, if we don't have numbers. And so, I would love to be able to have more of these conversations. And I mean, like, it's cool that you do it on your show. Magnus is doing it on his show. We do it on our show. Convo Couch is doing it. Nico's doing it. Like, I think more people are starting. I think some of the stigma is starting to break away, of people being willing to have conversations, where they disagree or, whatever. So that's really cool to see. So tell everybody where they can find your show and all of your social media and stuff like that, so that people can check out your work.
Yeah, well, follow me on Twitter, and I mostly post any updates if I'm going on anyone else's show or if I'm having someone on. So I'm at Reed Coverdale, ReedCoverdale on Twitter. And then I'm the Naturalist Capitalist on YouTube. Subscribe to me there. And then you can also find me on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, all the podcast networks. I'm usually about 2 weeks behind uploading audio versions of the podcast. What I'll do is I'll go live on YouTube and then I'll download the file and put it up. So usually like a couple weeks after it'll be up. But yeah, thanks guys for having me on. It was a great discussion.
Thank you.
I like these conversations too. I think it's always fun to find what we have in common instead of differently. I mean, it's always more interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And more productive. It's more productive. Can get things done that way, I think. So yeah, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you taking the time, and everybody make sure that you follow Reed's work. And yeah, we'll catch you next time.